Begin the current Daf Mesech is Gitin Daf. Begin 6 lines down at the top of the Yomid, where the Gemara continues a related discussion with the previous Daf regarding the Zman and the Get. As we discussed regarding one of the interpretations was because of Hades, so the Gemara continues on a similar theme regarding the dating of the Get. When is the effect? Is it from when you write it, when you sign it, when you give it? And that comes up in a few different halachic arenas. Today's daf. What we're discussing today's daf are this original conversation that started in the Matiknus Mabagin. Why did they institute a date by Gitin? The halach of havchana to differentiate was this mishas nesina, mishas ksiba, to know when it was given. A shvis mishametes, the halacha that shvis, the shmita generally cancels the loans. However, we'll see how that applies to the halacha of the ksuba. The halacha lekarina b'liyigos, that the person is not allowed to go ahead and claim funds that were canceled, but there are certain exceptions that of notably Maisa Bezdin. When you have an act of the court, then that's considered as if you did it like a pruzbul almost, because the Bezdin is in charge of the collection and you're not really collecting. Then the next Mishnah is regarding Nechtav Yom, Nechtav Alayla, regarding it was written by daytime and signed at nighttime. That's basically it. So we begin the current Daf Yud Ches, 6 lines down at the top of the Yomid. Says the Gemara, Itma we learned. Now what's this told about, from when do we count for a get? So Rashi explains, there's 3 months that a woman has to wait after she gets divorced because of what's called havchana. You have to differentiate between the paternity of the child, who's the father. Now, the period of 3 months, you can't tell if a woman is necessarily pregnant. So you have to wait after the first husband to the second husband, a period of 3 months. Now, when do you count the 3 months? When the woman has to wait after she's divorced. So it's machlekes. Rambam says mashas nesina, when the woman when it's given over to her. Shmuel says mashas ksiv, when the get is written. So Maskim Lord of Nosim Marhoishi says, Lishmuel, according to Shmuel, comes up with something very interesting. You tell me it's the date on the get itself. So Yomer, people are going to say, Shtei nashim mechatzar achas. You could have 2 women in the same courtyard of the same person who's going overseas and is giving 2 Gitin to his 2 wives on the same day. But one was written a month earlier. Comes out according to Shmuel, Zu asura v'zu meteches. One's permitted to get married after 2 months, and one's permitted only after 3 months. People are going to wonder. So, 2 women were divorced on the same day, but Shmuel was according to the day when it's written. So how's that possible? One woman's going to have to be permitted only a month later. Someone like Bai says, what's the difficulty? Each one has its get that's proving this concept of why it is that she's allowed to get remarried at a certain time and she has to wait a month. Because look at the date on the get, it's not a problem. Because basically his question was, look at the time when it's given. He says, no, look at the time when the get is written. Tanakim said the Rav, but we have a Bryce that says like Rav, that it goes based on when it was given. And Tanakim said the Shmuel, the Bryce that says like Shmuel, it says that it's based on the date when it was written. As the Gemara brings both Bryces. Tanakim said the Rav, what's the Bryce says like Rav, that it goes based on when it was given? Someone sends a get to his wife. Now, it took the agent 3 months to get the get to the wife. So Mishigia get liyada. Even so, it took 3 months, right? So they haven't. He's already been. The get has been already written 3 months before. But even so, Mishigia get liyada, when the get comes to her hand, tzrichlam to give mechadash. He has to wait 3 months. So that's clearly like Rav. Did you go mishas nesina? Not mishas, the ksiva, because it was going based on the ksiva, you already had 3 months. Now, parenthetically, the Brisa just says, well, the get yashin ein chayishashin, we're not concerned for a get yashin, which the Gemara later on Daf Yomi Beis teaches a Brisa that a person not allowed to divorce with an old get. What's an old get? An old get is if after the get was written, so he didn't give it yet, he was secluded with her after it was written. What's the problem with that? Because what happens is that she might become pregnant. Now, she's still married. The husband just had to get, he's threatening, he's ready to enter the safe already, whatever. And if she becomes pregnant, people might say that the get was before the conception of this child. Because she might become pregnant between when the get was written and when it was given. Later point in time, they're going to say, oh, the get was before. It must be this child is born from a Maises Nus. No one's going to want to marry this child. He's going to have a problem with yichus. The truth is, it was between this couple. He never divorced her yet, so it's a kosher child. To avoid that problem, we never allow a get yashin, an old get, to be used, meaning if they were secluded after the writing, to be utilized. Now, says the Brisa, we don't have to be concerned for a get yashin over here. Why not? Because they weren't secluded together. The shliach was on the road for 3 months. There's no get yashin element over here to say, no, it's al to get. You can't use al to get. No, it's a very basic thing the Brisa is saying. It's just hard to explain it. But they weren't nisyachin. The whole halacha of get yashin is only if they were secluded after it's already written. Which Lisa says that he sounds like he wants to explain something more, that even though she has to wait 3 months, it sounds like the Brisa is trying to bavar and to forewarn. Why am I requiring 3 months? It's not because we're concerned that because they had already been together and therefore you have to wait 3 months now. Because no, we're not concerned with get yashin. Rather, like we said before, when you have 2 women in the same courtyard, you go based on when it's given. So that's not the concern. We're only waiting because you have to wait for when it's given. That's why. Okay. Telling if I say the Shmuel, the Brisa says like Shmuel. Mashlish get le'ishtay. If someone gives the get to a third party to divorce his wife at the end of 3 months, and he's going on his way, a lot of times people say, after a certain period of time, I want you to do something, execute something. And he tells him, and says, I want you to give it to my wife. I want to be very far away when she gets this. 3 months, then give it to her. So the Brisa, when they give it to her, shall I get married right away? Because this Brisa says, like Shmuel, that the 3 month interval is, from the time when the get is, written. And it was already written 3 months before.
What's right away mean? Literally or?
Yeah, literally. Yeah. Because the 3 months had already passed. Now, the Brisa says again here the same parenthetical point. We'll get Yashin and Chaysh, not concerned for old get. Again, he wasn't secluded. The whole halacha of get Yashin is only when you have, it's not just having a gap between the ksiva and the sin, is that you had a gap and you were together. Then we're concerned that maybe you were also together in an intimate way, and then there might be a child, and you might run into that problem. Only that. So that's a parenthetical idea. Now the Gemara just tells us that in practice, we have many Amoram that disagree to this. Rav Kana, Rav Papi, Rav Ashi, these 3 Amoram, Avdi Meshas Ksiva. They did like Shmuel, that the 3 month interval had to be waited from when it was written. But Rav Papa, Rav Huna, Rav Yeshua, Avdi Meshas Ksiva, they did from when it was given. So again, according to the party lines of Shmuel and Rab, the halacha is Meshas Ksiva. It's like Shmuel. It's from when it's written and not from when it is given. Now the Gemara brings another machlekes Rab and Shmuel in a related topic regarding the Maisa Bezdin of these court documents. Itmar learns as follows: Meimasa Kesuba. When is it that a ksuba is like other debt documents, that it's mishametas? What happens is, the halacha is, that it says in the pasuk that Vash Shmita La'igos Yisraelu, the halacha is that Shmita cancels all loans. Now, a ksuba is Eina Mishametis, is not canceled, because it's a Maisa Besin. So it's essentially like when you do a prusbul is the same idea, or when you give it over to the Bezdin, that it's not you that's trying to collect the money, it's by the court. So the question the Gemara has is, when would we say that a ksuba, even though it is a Maisa Besin, would be canceled by the Shemitah year?
Where did you even have the Haman mean that it was?
Right, that's going to happen. Oh. Sounds like because they knew this machlekes and they're just phrasing it in a way that when is this going to be, but they knew that there's going to be times, because we'll see, everyone agrees there is times when it's going to become. The question is, when is it going to become like a regular shtar chayv? And it's not anymore Maisa Bezdin that Shemitah will cancel it. So we have 2 opinions. Rav Amma, he says, Mishatifka, when it becomes flawed. What do you mean flawed? Because you already collected a little bit of your ksuba. The ksuba was whatever, 200, 400, whatever the amount was, and she collected a little bit from the estate. So she already revealed her intention that she is trying to collect. So usually you say lo yigois, you say Maisa Bezdin is lo yigois because you're not collecting. So it's a Maisa Bezdin. And therefore the court could continue to collect. It's not a violation of after the Shmit, lo yigois is to the Eyu, because you're not collecting. Here, if she did collect a little bit, you see she is a yigois. And if you're a yigois, okay, then you're not like a Maisa Bezdin anymore. You're like a shtar chayv. And That's one element, but there has to be a second element, but says Rab. Has to be tifkim, that it was a pagam already, meaning to say you already made a flaw because you tried collecting with it already. And v'tizkef. What does v'tizkef mean? Literally, it means zakuf, it means standing it up. But it means to say that you transitioned the rest into a loan. What happens is that there's debt and there's a loan. A debt is, this is what you owe me. A loan is like, okay, fine, you know what? You really owe this to me, but I'm going to give you time. And that transitions that into like, okay, I'm lending you. You owe me the money now. I'll give you 3 months. It's essentially lending it now for those 3 months, whatever the amount the debt is. So now it doesn't become any more ksuba and a maisa bezin that there's no hashmata. It actually now takes effect in it like a shtar chayv. It's like you made a new loan document. Say, you guys, you owe me this. It was a $200 ksuba, and now I collected $50, and now you owe me $150. You know what? Get that bargain. I'll give you 6 months. So now it was nifgam and zakav lav b'milva. That says Rab, that's going to make it now that Shemitah is going to cancel it. Shmuel Amma, he says no, you don't need both. He says it's one or the other. Pagma, if you collected with it a little bit, av b'shaloi zakva, even if you did not turn it into a loan, because you already revealed your intention that you collected a little bit, that now it already applies. Lo yigos, because you already were trying to be yigos. Yigos means like to collect. Or zakva, if you turned it into a loan, av b'shaloi pagma, even if you didn't collect anything for it. Which means to say, you said, you turned it in transition to loan and said, you guys owe me the ksuba, but don't worry, hey, I'm going to give you this, it's like a loan. I mean, you guys could pay me back in a certain period of time. So by transitioning it into a loan, even without collecting, he holds this one or the other is already going to be mishamed. So the Gemara, and previous, and this is probably why they brought in this machlekes, which really not related to what we're talking about, is also Tani Kavasei Derav Tani Kavasei Shmuel, like we said before in the previous machlekes, which was relating to the halacha of Gitin. We have a brayso that says like Rav and a brayso says like Shmuel. Because Tani Gabba said the Rav says like Rav says, it says when does the ksuba is going to be canceled by the Shemitah year? It says clearly like him, shetifkim v'tiskif. If you do both, you collect with it so it becomes pugm, it's not whole, and you transition into a loan. But if pugm v'le zakva, zakva v'le pugm, if it's only one and not the other, ein mishamet is not going to cancel shetifkim v'tiskif. Says it's clearly like Rav until you're going to do both of them. At the same time, Tani Kavasei de Shmuel, we have a brayso that says like Shmuel. Why? Because this brayso says as follows: Oynis, if someone rapes a besula, so the liability is 50 silver coins, or the knas. What's that? That refers to the Mitzi Shemra, who he spreads out rumors regarding his wife that she didn't have besulim, so you have to pay 100 silver coins, or pitui, regarding, it's also similar to Einis, but instead of using force, he seduces her, or ksubas isha, a woman's ksuba. Shezikafan b'milva, if it was transitioned into loan, you owe as Maisa Bezin, as the Torah, you owe this money. They say, okay, you don't have to pay right now. Let's put it on a certain 6 month period, turning into a loan. Mishamtin, then it's going to be canceled by Shemitah. But if not, if you didn't turn it into a loan, imishamtin, because it's like a Maisa Bezin, it's not a yigos type of situation. But one thing we see clearly is that it's saying like Shmuel, that just being bezakav of b'milva, even though none of it was collected yet, will be nishmat from the Shemitah. Now, maybe say niskafim b'milva. When do we say that it turns into a loan? Which people might be wondering, what does that mean? How does it transition into a loan? It's a debt. Says the Gemara, says the brayso, b'shas hamada b'din. Meaning, when you take him to court, that is essentially transitioning it into not just a generic debt, but like into, now you owe me this money as if it's I lent you this money, and therefore that's like Shmuel, that you see that only to be niskaf and b'milva would already make it into that Shemitah would cancel. But again, when you take him to court, even though nothing was collected yet, that is now as if like you lent him the money. Now it's a different type of a debt, not just a generic debt. This is specific, like okay, you owe it, and that's the machlekes Rav and Shmuel. Now relating to the machlekes in our Mishnah, of when it was written by daytime and then it was signed at nighttime, which we had the machlekes in our Mishnah, is that okay or not? So Amar Shmuel says the following halacha: Kesuba, the dowry, is kamaisa bezin dami. It's like an act of the court because it's a stipulation of the court to have a ksuba. So therefore, what does Shmuel want with this? He says as follows: Ma maisa bezin, just like the act of the court, which the obligation is because of the psak of the din, and even though it's not signed, it's still considered an obligation. So therefore, you can't really have the problem about muktim, about predated. So therefore, nechtam bayim and nechtam balayla, was written by day and the signed by nighttime, is going to be okay. Av kesuba, he says. The kesuba, when it's written, when they go to the chuppah, which is the closeness of the relationship, the shibud already takes effect, even though it wasn't signed. So therefore, nechtevet bayim and nechtam balayla, it can be written during the day and it can be signed during the night, because the signing, unlike the halach of Gitin in our Mishnah, which we had about Chlekes, by the ksuba is a ma'isa bezin, and therefore the obligation is created by the ruling without the signatures. So therefore, the Yizman, the shtar, does not precede the actual ruling. The ksuba obligation is also affected through the intimacy of the chuppah, and therefore it's not in ma'akiv with the chasimus of the ksuba. Now the Gemara actually brings that ksuba said that Rebchi Barav, his ksuba, echtem bayem, echtem balayla. It was written during the daytime and Saturday night. Rav husband Rav was over there. He didn't say anything. So you see that that's going to be okay. Says meaning in other words, let's say that he holds like Shmuel. Isn't that a riot that he holds of this halacha? Because or else he should have said it's a problem because the date of when it's written is different when it was signed. So no, it's not a riot that he necessarily holding Shmuel's halacha, because asukin ba'isa inyan haba. They were engaged in that topic from when it was written till it was signed. That even by other documents would be kosher, even though it's written by day and signed at nighttime. Ketani learned the Bryce Amar Lazar or something. It says Leishon. We didn't learn that documents that are written by day and signed at night is going to be possible because it's muktim. That's elik she'in asukim ba'is'in. It's only when they weren't engaged in the topic the whole time. Av asukim ba'is'in, when they engaged in that topic, since the witnesses that were prepared to sign, they just had to wait until the sefer finished writing the shtar, which took all time till it got till nighttime. Even though it turns out that the signing is at nighttime, kosher can be kosher because, as Rashi explains, from the moment it was written, the word's getting out, because it was just a delay of game that held us back. But essentially, just like it was written and signed during the daytime, and therefore it's going to be kosher. And there was not a right that he had like Shmuel, like Shub is different because Ma'aseh Bezin, he would hold like that even by Shar Shtaras too.
So the Ma'aseh by a chuppah, you see people always rushing like crazy. The Ma'aseh,
It's a chumrah, you don't have
it's a chumrah.
Once you start the
Right,
process,
no, but I'm saying you see from a
once you start the process, you can continue.
Yeah.
It's already signed.
Yeah, here it's because of the koil. Here it's because the word has to get out, and about collection, meaning we're going Shar Shtaras, how could you collect from Mishabadim if the date is different? They say no, the word already gets out when it's being written because it's, like you said, the process already started. So therefore it would be like taking effect. Yeah, so the Mishnah said that Reb Shimon said that by this case of Nechta Ben Yom and Nechta Balayla, we had this Bachlekes. And the Kama said there's again Muktim, it's going to be puzzle, which we had the two reasons what's the problem with that. Reb Shimon says, no, it's going to be kosher. So Amar Rabbi says, my time to Reb Shimon, what's the reason of Reb Shimon? You have the problems that we said in the Tanakama, either because he's going to cover for his niece, or because of Paris, where it's the woman's going to lose out, because or the husband's going to lose out because of the muktim part of it. So why does he say it's okay? Says Gemara, because Ksava he held, we already explained this when we said the Mishnah, that once he was already giving eyes to the divorce, meaning he was already looking to divorce, so you're right, he doesn't have rights to the Paris. So we had said that it's going to be a problem because the husband is going to lose out from an earlier date. It's not true. When she collects the money of from the time of when it was written, that's appropriate because even though it wasn't given till later, or wasn't even signed till later, still you lose the rights to the payers in the moment that you're already taking interest in divorcing her. So therefore he holds he has no such concern. And also, like we said, there's no such shchicha. Now, says the Gemara, Omer Shlakish, he says, but he qualifies his teaching, and he says, Loi hichsher Reb Shimon ella alta. Shimon, that we said that, okay, even though it's written by day and signed nighttime, that he allows this, that it should be a different halachic day, it's only if it's immediate. It's got to be like that night. But let's say you wrote it one day and then 10 days later you signed it, says Rish Lakish, then light. Then even Reb Shimon would hold that wouldn't be okay as a Gitin Daf base because Chashin Hashem Akayis. We're concerned that maybe he appeased his wife in the interim period, and then they were intimate, and then it's a get yashan. It's an old get. So you can't just wait 10 days in between. That would be invalid even according to Shimon. Shimon says it's okay, but for the two concerns of Basachaysa, Peri, it's that night. But 10 days later, that wouldn't work. But Rabbi Yochanan disagrees. Says no. Even though it's 10 days later in Isa the Pais, it would be true that they made up this couple. Kala Islay Lamilsa. The word would get out that they made up. Rashi says something very interesting. He says, don't think the neighbors, they don't hear the fighting that's going on between the couple. Even if you live in it's not a development, even if it's not the same world, they notice things. Now, when it calms down, everyone sees that their couple is getting along. They're taking the walk, whatever. I'm saying the neighbors know. So therefore, says Rabbi Yochanan, no, we're not concerned for a get yashin that maybe they made up and maybe they were together and then maybe subsequently 10 days later they got in a fight again and then he divorced her and then you're running the problem of get yashin. No, had it been that they would have made up, the Eilim would have known. And that would have known, so then they wouldn't have used it because they would have known that it's a get yashin. And the fact that we didn't hear, we have no reason to be concerned that they did make up, and therefore you could use a get that was written 10 days before and only signed 10 days later. That's Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg, I guess, how much the nosy neighbors know, or how concerned we have to be for being the pious. Now, related discussion, Itmar, we learned, Omar La Sarah, regarding this idea about a delay of 10. So Omar La Sarah, let's say it says to 10 people, Kisu get le'ishti. I want you to write a get to my wife. So Amar B'Yechon, it says like this. You know what really happens? Is that Shnayim, 2 of them, is what he intended to sign Mishum Eidim as witnesses. For Kulam and all the rest, he didn't really need them to sign on the get. He wanted to publicly embarrass her. So they're Mishum tonight. That's only like a stipulation that he made in the get. It shouldn't be a get unless they all sign. Shlakasham, he says no. Kulam Mishum Eidim. They all have the halachic status as witnesses because he wants them to sign. So they want to say, wait a second, hey, what's the case talking about first before we understand the machlekes? If he didn't say all of you, he just said to 10, I want you guys to write the words in our Gemara were Amalasar Kisu get le'ishti. Write a get to my wife. If he didn't say Kulchem, all of you write a get to my wife. So but so we learn the Mishnah of Samach Vav Mabez that says actually clearly, Amalasar, if you tell to 10 people, Kisu get le'ishti, write a get for my wife, Echad Kaisim, one guy writes, B'shnayim Chaisman, and only 2 people.
Isn't it preferable that there's more people so you don't know that she's divorced, like when a get is written?
What?
Isn't it preferable that the more people the better when a get is written so people know that she's divorced, there should be any shot?
Yeah, so we usually assume that once you have 2 witnesses, that Chavachavesli, the word's going to get out. Yeah, I don't know if there's a need to have more people there. We do say by Chalitza that we have the Hamoinam there. Yeah, it's a good point. But when he specifically, the husband, I don't think is concerned about the halacha. Right. You know, when he's stipulating that, he wants to shame her, at least according to that opinion. Other one says no, he wants them to sign. But the Gemara says if you didn't say kulchem, then the Mishnah says
there's no shtach. There's a get.
Right.
So she can.
Shaila's what gets the word out, right? It's the Eidim.
Yeah, but who's the husband to decide how many items needs to be in the get?
He can stipulate whatever. So that if you're like that, it's nice, so he can make whatever tonight he wants to. If he's saying that he wants Eidim, I hear it's a good question. It's saying if it's not a tonight, so to speak, he wants to Eidim. What is this that he's demanding all these Eidim to be on it?
It's just that he comes in the Gemara. Who says it's
no? Because it sounds like the machlekes is that one opinion is saying that it's a tonight. It's not be'etzim Eidim. No, he wants them to be Eidim. It sounds like they're both Tanaim. Shaila we're going to see in a second the difference in halacha between them. It sounds like one is like, I don't really want them to sign. It's like a Tanai Shabbai that I want them to sign. The other one's like, no, my Tanai is that they sign, that they be Eidim. We'll see relevance if they're called Eidim or if they're called Tanai. So yeah, it's a good question how to differentiate that. But if you didn't say Kulchem, the Mishnah said explicitly that one writes and 2 sign. So that's actually, like Rashi explained, difficult on both Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. Because they all said they all have to sign for different reasons, either because they're all Eidim or because it's at night. But if you didn't say Kulchem, then all of them don't even have to sign. So obviously says Gemara El rather. No, the Amalahu Kulchem. He said the case the Machlekes Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg must be talking about that he said all of you. That it shouldn't be a get until you all sign. So says Gemara, my Banayu. Then what's the difference if you consider it as Tanai, or if you consider them as Eidim? Either way they all have to sign. Because that's what actually the end of that Mishnah teaches. If you said Kulchem Kizaged Lishti, one writes, and they all sign. So then what's the difference between Yishlach and Rebbe? It's semantics. Says the difference between them is the Chosim Beitrei Menai B'Yomei. So this is where it relates back to the previous Gemara. If two of them sign on the day when it was written, the other 8, Mikan Ratzara Yamim. They do it, let's say, in a time period of 10 days. So before it's given to her, they all signed. So that says the Gemara is the Machlekes. Man the Misham tonight, the one that says that it's just a stipulation because he wants to embarrass her. Kasha, it's Kasha because the Maisa, they all signed on it. But a Man the Misham Eidim, the one says no, he wanted 10 Eidim. It's a frumak. He has his chumras. He says, I don't know what's going to be. This Eid, that Eid. I want 10 Eidim. Then Pas is going to be invalid because, as Rashi explains, it's not a whole Eidus until they all sign. Now, since they all didn't sign the day when it's written, that makes it into a get muktam. Therefore, it's going to be invalid. That's the difference in Rabbi Shloimy in this halacha of if they're tanoi, if there's just a stipulation, it's tanoi, it doesn't have the halachas of Eidim, or is it in the halacha of Eidim that you want to 10 Eidim, then it would be possible. That's one shot. Or Yinami, another approach is that if it turns out one of the 10 witnesses is a relative or he's a flawed witness, which the Gemara said that enough Testament tells us that even if 100 witnesses and one of them turns out to be a Kalei apostle, the whole Eid is batal. Very geshmak. Lamanda Mishum tonight, the one that says that the reason why having the extra Eid is because of a condition. Kasha, it's kasha because they're not be'etz and Eidim. It's just I want to have this these other 8 people signing it. Lamanda Mishum Eidim, one says no, it's because of the halach of Eidus. Apostles can be possible because even if you have 100, if one of them is Kalei apostle, it's going to be possible. Now, however, the Gemara does tell us that ichasim betchila, if in one of the first 2 witnesses you have signed on a Karev apostle, someone who is a relative or someone who is flawed, and they all signed that same day, Amila Kasha, some say that will be valid, Amila Apostle, some say it's going to be possible. Who says what? So the Gemara explains. Amila Kasha, some say that's going to be Kasha, so Rashi explains. According to the one who says, Rabbi Yochanan, that it's because of Tanai, even though the first 2 witnesses is either a Karev or apostle, the testimony is going to be validated with those who are fit to testify, and therefore the first one, let's say, or 2 who is a Karev apostle, is to be considered as Tanaihu, as from the conditional ones. Because as Rashi says, Mistama, the ones who are kosher from the get are the ones for the purposes of Eidus, and the relative, although he's starting from the first 2, is going to be considered as from the conditional ones. But Amal Apostle, some say it's going to be possible because Asal Achluf B'Shtav is the Alma. No, you might confuse it with generic documents because since they signed first, you might come to say, oh no, definitely those are the ones who signed for the purposes of the witnesses. And then you're going to come to validate relatives even by old documents, and therefore, even according to the Man Damar, Tanai, we would invalidate. So that's a machlekes we're going to have to know. In the first 2, would we say it's kosher, or would we say that it's possible? Remember, brings a story on this topic. Someone told to minion of people the word kulchem, as Rashi has on. All of you, kisu yel ishti, write a get for my wife. Now what happened was, chasim beitrei minai b'yomi. So 2 of them, which was one of the interpretations we brought before, what happened, the story was that 2 of them signed on that day, and then the rest signed within the next 10 days. So Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg came from Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg. Amalei said to him the famous phrase of Gitin Daf in Testament Aleph, Kedaihu Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon is worthy. What's this Reb Shimon is worthy? Meaning, in our Mishnah that he says, Nechtav b'yom v'nechtam alayla, it's going to be kosher, even though there was a gap between when it's written and when it was signed. Says Reb Shimon it's going to be kosher. Kedaihu Reb Shimon lismach alav b'shas adchak. To rely on him in a pressing situation, meaning where this guy already went on his way, or she already got married with this get, and it's not possible any other way. So therefore, we're going to validate here the signatures that were done at a later point in time. Says the Gemara, what are you talking about? V'amar Rish Lakish, but Rish Lakish said on Amid Aleph of Yud Daf Yud Ches, Lehichshir b'Shimon ela alter. What's heista with Shimon b'Shas Adchak? The whole Reb Shimon said Rish Lakish was only if it was immediate. You wrote it that day and you signed it that night. I'm like, how much are you alive? Shimon never said such a kula in a period of 10 days. Now we said that we're going to be considered Shema pious. So what are you saying? Reb Shimon never said such a thing. Says the Gemara, this was what they were asked from Shuma Levi. Says the Gemara, in that halacha, like Rabbi Yochanan severely. Rabbi Yochanan had disagreed with Rish Lakish. He said Reb Shimon's kula was even for 10 days. Because he said, we're not concerned that maybe they made up, because the neighbors would have known that they made up. The fact that we didn't hear, they were not concerned with that. So the Gemara says, wait a second, you're going with Rabbi Yochanan? But Rabbi Yochanan, but this is where it's interesting how this story ties together the two sugis that we had. Rabbi Yochanan says, when you have 10 people that you say, I want all of you to write and sign this get for my wife, Rabbi Yochanan said, Shnayim Mishum Eidim, only 2 are Eidim. V'kula Mishum Tanai, and the rest are only as a stipulation. If that's the case, so there's no get muktim over here, because 2 of the witnesses signed by Yom. So even according to Rabbanan, it's going to be called Reb Shimon Kedai, Reb Shimon Lismach B'Shas Adchak, because Machan Nigin for them, right? It's not Reb Shimon; it's even the Rabbanan, because the other witnesses that signed 10 days later, they're not Eidim. They're Rabbi Yochanan said it's a Tnai. It's a Munav Shach. You're saying you're going like Rabbi Yochanan, and therefore Rabbi Shimon would be matir even 10 days later. But Rabbi Yochanan himself said that when you say Kulchem, then you don't need them. They're only tonight. They could be 100 days later. Says the Gemara, no. In that halacha, Rabbi Shimon Levi held like Rish Lakish. That's all because of Eidim. Shimon Levi needed to say Kedai Reb Shimon Lismach B'Shas Adchak because he held like Rish Lakish regarding the halacha of Kulchem, that they're all Eidim. But at the same time, he held like Rabbi Yochanan in the halacha Mekan Matzar Yamim in the opinion of Reb Shimon, and therefore Kedai Reb Shimon Lismach B'Shas
Why
Adchak.
sing the song according to
Rabbi Shimon Levi in this halacha. Well, I mean, no, I don't know if that's true. I mean, you always say Kedai Reb Shimon Lismach B'Shas Adchak. In this story, you were only able to sing that song. Thank you to anytime.